We live in a world that glorifies indifference. Just don't care, they say. Let it roll off your back. But let's be honest. How many of us have tried that only to find ourselves awake at 2 a.m., replaying conversations, regretting our silence, or feeling the sting of words we pretended didn't matter? The idea that strength means being unaffected is not only misleading, but also emotionally exhausting. True strength isn't about shutting down. It's about standing firm in who we are without letting every little thing define us. Pretending to be unbothered is often a defense mechanism. Somewhere along the way, we learned that showing emotion is weakness, that caring too much makes us vulnerable to criticism. So we build walls. We develop a nonchalant attitude, telling ourselves that if we don't react, we won't hurt. But here's the catch. When we numb the bad, we also numb the good. The same walls that keep out pain also block connection, joy, and growth. In reality, acting like nothing affects us doesn't make us strong, it makes us disconnected. True resilience is not found in indifference. It's found in emotional agility, the ability to acknowledge what hurts while refusing to let it control us. Strength is not pretending you don't care. It's knowing what's worth your care. It's about recognizing that some things deserve our energy and attention while others do not. When we confuse strength with apathy, we rob ourselves of the ability to process, heal, and move forward with clarity. There's a difference between being unbothered and being grounded. Being unbothered says, I don't feel anything. Being grounded says, I feel, but I'm not controlled by it. When we are grounded, we allow ourselves to experience emotions, but we don't become them. We can acknowledge disappointment without spiraling into despair. We can recognize criticism without letting it define us. We can feel hurt without becoming bitter. This is the real work, learning to hold space for our emotions without letting them dictate our worth or our reactions. Ironically, the people who seem the most unbothered are often carrying the heaviest burdens. Silence doesn't mean peace. Desisting things that matter doesn't make them disappear. The healthiest people are not the ones who avoid feelings, but the ones who have learned to navigate them. They understand that ignoring emotions doesn't erase them. It just buries them deeper, where they resurface in unexpected ways, burnout, resentment, or even physical symptoms like stress and anxiety. So how do we shift from pretending to be unbothered to actually cultivating strength? First, we practice discernment. Not everything requires our reaction, but that doesn't mean we should suppress everything either. We ask ourselves, is this worth my energy? Some battles are worth fighting. Others are best left alone. Strength is knowing the difference. Second, we allow ourselves to process emotions in healthy ways through conversation, reflection, or even journaling so they don't take root beneath the surface. Third, we remind ourselves that feeling something doesn't mean we are weak. It means we are human. Let's redefine strength. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of self-awareness. It's the ability to choose where we invest our energy. It's knowing that just because something hurts doesn't mean we have to let it control us. The strongest people aren't the ones who act like nothing affects them. They are the ones who have learned how to feel deeply while standing tall, who can face hard things without losing themselves in them. So the next time someone tells you to just act like you don't care, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, do I really want to live a life of pretending, or do I want to build the kind of strength that allows me to care, to feel, and to move forward with resilience? Because real power isn't in acting like nothing bothers you. It's in knowing what truly matters and carrying yourself with grace, no matter what comes your way. From the time we were young, many of us learned that vulnerability is risky. Maybe we shared our feelings and were met with judgment. Maybe we opened our hearts and someone took advantage of that openness. Over time, we started to build armor, emotional walls to keep ourselves safe. We learned to guard our words, to mask our true emotions, and to shrink parts of ourselves that felt too raw or exposed. But here's the problem. While armor may protect us from pain, it also keeps us from connection, growth, and true belonging. Shutting down feels safe in the moment. When life feels overwhelming, when people disappoint us, or when criticism stings, it's tempting to retreat behind a shield of indifference. We tell ourselves, if I don't let anyone in, I can't be hurt. But in our attempt to protect ourselves, we also cut ourselves off from the very things that make life meaningful: love, joy, purpose, and the deep relationships that make us feel seen. The paradox of armor is that the more we rely on it, the more isolated we become. Authenticity, on the other hand, requires courage. It means showing up as we truly are, even when we don't have all the answers, even when we feel exposed. It means admitting when we're struggling instead of pretending we have it all together. It means choosing honesty over perfection, connection over protection. But let's be clear, authenticity is not about oversharing or spilling our hearts to people who haven't earned that trust. It's about being real with ourselves first and showing up in ways that align with our values, not our fears. The biggest difference between armor and authenticity is control versus confidence. Armor is about controlling how people perceive us, never looking weak, never showing cracks. Authenticity is about confidence in who we are, even when others don't understand or approve. When we wear armor, we filter our words, our emotions, even our dreams, out of fear that someone might reject us. But when we embrace authenticity, we start living from a place of wholeness rather than defense. We stop performing and start being. There's a cost to carrying armor. It's heavy, it's exhausting. And over time, it limits our ability to experience real happiness. When we're constantly in self-protection mode, we don't take risks. We avoid hard conversations. We miss opportunities because fear tells us to play it safe. We keep people at arm's length, assuming that distance will keep us safe from pain. But the truth is, shutting down doesn't prevent pain. It just trades one kind of suffering for another. Instead of risking rejection, we suffer loneliness. Instead of facing discomfort, we suffer stagnation. So how do we take off the armor and step into authenticity? First, we acknowledge the moments when we feel the urge to shut down. Maybe it's after receiving criticism. Maybe it's when someone hurts us. Maybe it's when we feel like we're not enough. In those moments, we pause and ask, am I reacting from fear or from truth? If it's fear, we gently remind ourselves that we are worthy, regardless of how others respond. Second, we practice showing up in small ways, having honest conversations, sharing our real opinions, allowing people to see our imperfections. Little by little, we build the muscle of authenticity. It's important to remember that courage isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about feeling the fear and choosing to show up anyway. When we drop the armor, we create space for genuine relationships, for self-acceptance, for a life that feels aligned instead of performative. We start to trust that our worth isn't tied to other people's opinions. We learn that true confidence isn't about looking invincible. It's about knowing we're enough, even when we feel vulnerable. At the end of the day, the choice is ours. Live behind walls, guarded but disconnected, or step into the world as we are, exposed but free. One path offers the illusion of safety, the other offers the reality of courage. And while authenticity may feel risky, it is the only way to truly belong to ourselves, to our people, and to a life that is full, rich, and real. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. We hear the word and immediately associate it with weakness, exposure, or the possibility of being hurt. From a young age, many of us were taught that to be strong, we have to hide our emotions, push through without showing struggle, and avoid situations that make us feel uncertain. But what if vulnerability isn't something to be avoided? What if instead of a liability, it's actually one of our greatest strengths? Reframing vulnerability isn't about denying that it's scary. It's about recognizing that it's a doorway to growth, courage, and deep connection. When we think of vulnerability as weakness, we instinctively try to protect ourselves from it. We avoid sharing our true feelings, downplay our struggles, and hesitate to put ourselves in situations where we might fail. We convince ourselves that if we don't care too much, we can't be hurt. But in doing so, we don't just protect ourselves from pain, we also block ourselves from love, joy, and opportunity. Vulnerability isn't about recklessness. It's about choosing to engage with life fully, knowing that not everything will go our way, but believing that we are resilient enough to handle it. One of the biggest fears around vulnerability is the idea that being open means being at the mercy of other people's reactions. If we share a dream and someone criticizes it, will we be crushed? If we admit we're struggling, will people think less of us? This fear is real, but the key to staying open without being shaken is understanding that our worth isn't determined by how others respond. Vulnerability doesn't mean letting every opinion shape our identity. It means showing up authentically while knowing that our sense of self is rooted in something deeper than external validation. True vulnerability comes with boundaries. It's not about sharing everything with everyone or allowing ourselves to be walked over. It's about intentional openness, choosing the right people to confide in, knowing when to speak up, and recognizing that not every space is safe for our most tender truths. Some people earn the right to hear our stories while others do not. By setting these boundaries, we can be open without feeling exposed, courageous without feeling reckless. Vulnerability, when practiced wisely, doesn't leave us powerless. It empowers us to connect in ways that are healthy and meaningful. Another powerful shift in reframing vulnerability is realizing that it doesn't just affect our personal relationships. It also plays a role in our ambitions, creativity, and willingness to take risks. Every great idea, every bold move, every step towards something new requires vulnerability. If we wait until we are completely confident before we take action, we will stay stuck. Whether it's starting a new career, expressing an unpopular opinion, or creating something from scratch, the willingness to be seen, flaws and all, is what separates those who grow from those who stay in their comfort zones. So how do we stay open without letting everything shake us? First, we acknowledge that discomfort is part of the process. Vulnerability doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it strengthens us in the long run. Second, we practice self-trust. Instead of fearing failure or rejection, we remind ourselves that we can handle whatever comes our way. Third, we surround ourselves with people who encourage our growth rather than exploit our openness. Not everyone will understand our journey, and that's okay. The right people will. The irony is that the more we embrace vulnerability, the stronger we become. The less we resist it, the more we realize that being open doesn't make us fragile. It makes us brave. It allows us to build genuine relationships, chase meaningful dreams, and live a life that isn't dictated by fear. We stop worrying about how we're perceived and start focusing on what truly matters, showing up fully, living wholeheartedly, and refusing to let the fear of being hurt keep us from being seen. In the end, reframing vulnerability is about shifting our perspective from what if I get hurt to what if I grow because of this. It's about understanding that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward despite it. Vulnerability isn't about exposing ourselves to unnecessary pain. It's about refusing to let fear keep us from living fully. And when we learn to embrace it in a way that is intentional, balanced, and rooted in self-worth, we don't just survive life's uncertainties, we thrive in them. There's a fine line between guarding your heart and closing it off entirely. In a world that often feels overwhelming, where opinions fly at us from every direction and emotions run high, it's easy to believe that shutting down is the best way to protect our peace. We tell ourselves that if we just stop caring, if we detach from everything, we won't get hurt. But here's the truth. Numbness is not strength, and indifference is not healing. The real work isn't in becoming unaffected. It's in learning how to care without carrying burdens that don't belong to us. Many people confuse emotional boundaries with emotional walls. A wall says, I will let nothing in. I refuse to feel. A boundary says, I will decide what gets my time, my energy, and my emotional investment. Walls keep everyone out, including the good. Boundaries, on the other hand, allow us to remain open without being overwhelmed. They help us engage with life, relationships, and challenges without losing ourselves in the process. The goal isn't to stop feeling, it's to learn what is ours to feel and what is not. Emotional numbness is a defense mechanism. It develops when we've been hurt too many times, when we've given too much of ourselves and received too little in return. We start believing that the only way to survive is to stop caring altogether. But when we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the joyful ones. We lose our ability to connect, to feel excitement, to experience deep love and fulfillment. Protecting your peace should never mean silencing your heart. Instead of choosing detachment, we must learn the art of selective investment, knowing where to pour our energy and where to step back. So how do we protect our emotional well-being without shutting down? The first step is self-awareness. Pay attention to how certain people, conversations, and situations make you feel. Do you leave an interaction feeling drained, anxious, or resentful? That's a sign that a boundary needs to be set. Boundaries aren't about punishing others. They are about honoring yourself. They say, I love you, but I won't sacrifice my mental and emotional health for your comfort. They allow us to show up for others without abandoning ourselves. The second step is learning the power of no without guilt. Many of us were raised to believe that saying no is selfish. We feel obligated to absorb other people's emotions, to fix every problem, to always be available. But constantly taking on more than we can handle leads to exhaustion, resentment, and burnout. Protecting your peace means recognizing that you are not responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. It's okay to say no to toxic conversations, unrealistic expectations, and emotional labor that is not yours to carry. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Another essential part of emotional boundaries is detaching from things that do not serve your growth. Not every argument is worth your energy. Not every opinion deserves your reaction. When we engage with negativity, we give it power over us. Instead of allowing every criticism or conflict to shake us, we must learn to ask ourselves, does this align with my values? Is this worth my peace? When the answer is no, we can choose to walk away. Not because we don't care, but because we care too much about our own well-being to waste energy on what doesn't matter. But boundaries require consistency. They are not one-time decisions, they are daily choices. People will test them. Some may try to make you feel guilty for protecting your peace. They may say you've changed, that you've become distant. But the truth is, growth often looks like distance to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Standing firm in your limits doesn't mean you don't love or care. It means you've learned to love and care without self-betrayal. At the end of the day, the goal is not to become numb. It's to become wise, to know when to give and when to step back, to be present in life without being consumed by everything around you, to love deeply without losing yourself. Emotional boundaries are not about shutting the world out. They are about allowing yourself to remain open while knowing that your peace is worth protecting. And when we learn this balance, we don't just survive. Resilience is often misunderstood. We think of it as sheer toughness, the ability to power through anything without breaking, without showing signs of struggle. But true resilience isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about knowing where to place your energy. It's about understanding that not every battle is worth fighting, not every setback is a crisis, and not every opinion deserves space in your mind. The key to resilience isn't just strength, it's perspective. When we learn to shift how we see challenges, disappointments, and even our own failures, we gain the ability to rise without carrying unnecessary weight. Life constantly demands our attention. Problems arise, people disappoint us, things don't go as planned. If we try to engage with everything that frustrates or offends us, we'll quickly find ourselves exhausted and bitter. Resilience requires discernment, the ability to ask, does this deserve my energy? Does this situation define me, or is it just a moment in time? Perspective allows us to step back and realize that not everything is personal, not everything is permanent, and not everything is worth our emotional investment. One of the greatest shifts in perspective is learning to differentiate between control and influence. Some things are within our power to change, and others are not. Wasting energy on things we cannot control, other people's opinions, the past, or circumstances beyond our reach, only drains us. But when we focus on what we can influence, our mindset, our responses, our actions, we reclaim our strength. Resilient people don't waste energy on what they wish was different. They take action where they can and release what they cannot change. Another important shift in perspective is recognizing that setbacks are not failures, they are feedback. When something doesn't go as planned, we have two choices. We can see it as proof that we're not good enough, or we can see it as a lesson that refines us. Resilience is built when we choose the latter. Every disappointment carries insight, every mistake offers wisdom, and every closed door redirects us to something better. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? We learn to ask, what is this teaching me? That shift in thinking is what allows us to move forward instead of getting stuck in frustration and self-doubt. Perspective also teaches us the power of emotional detachment. This doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop letting temporary situations define our long-term outlook. A negative comment doesn't determine our worth. A bad day doesn't mean a bad life. A disagreement doesn't mean the end of a relationship. Resilience is the ability to zoom out, to remind ourselves that we are bigger than this moment, that this pain, this frustration, this struggle is temporary. When we stop giving small things permanent residence in our minds, we free ourselves to focus on what truly matters. One of the hardest but most necessary lessons in resilience is learning to let go. Letting go doesn't mean we approve of what happened or that we weren't hurt. It means we refuse to be held hostage by it. We let go of old grudges, not because they weren't justified, but because carrying them weighs us down. We let go of past mistakes, not because they didn't matter, but because reliving them keeps us from moving forward. We let go of toxic narratives that tell us we are not enough because they were never true to begin with. Letting go is not weakness, it's the ultimate act of reclaiming our energy. Protecting our energy isn't about avoiding life's difficulties. It's about choosing where to invest our focus. Some battles make us stronger, others simply distract us. Some relationships nourish us, others drain us. Some challenges refine us, others are unnecessary noise. Resilient people learn to distinguish between the two. They ask, does this help me grow? Does this align with who I want to be? Is this worth my peace? And when the answer is no, they give themselves permission to walk away, not out of avoidance, but out of wisdom. At the core of resilience is the understanding that our energy is our most valuable resource. We cannot afford to waste it on things that do not serve our growth, our peace, or our purpose. By shifting our perspective, we gain the ability to see obstacles as stepping stones, to let go of what doesn't deserve our attention, and to rise above the noise. Resilience isn't about being unshaken by life. It's about knowing where to place your energy so that no matter what comes your way, you remain grounded, focused, and free.